Hey, welcome to Own Your Future podcast, where we help you own your future by navigating through some of the biggest financial decisions of your life. Today, we're going to have on a great realtor that I work with, Gaetan. Um, we've done a few deals together, and he's helped buyers that I've worked with transition through the buying process fairly well. So I wanted to have him on the show. Thank you for coming, Gaetan. How are you?
Doing good. Thank you, Eric, for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So we obviously working on a few deals together, and we're actually trying to help a buyer now, which there's been some challenges on with interest rates and everything like that. Tell people kind of what you're seeing out there in the market right now for some of these buyers that we're helping.
So as far as right now, like with the interest rates the way they are, I think right now it's been like a little bit of a slowdown compared to like the previous spring markets where like pretty much like after the pandemic. So right now what you're seeing, or
Yep.
at least what I'm seeing with a lot of my buyers, is you do see houses that do sit on the market for 30 days plus. However, there is opportunities with those houses. However, in the same time, depending on the house and depending on the market, those you still have houses that can go over asking and it'll be gone in under a week as well too. So it's a mixture of market, house, as well as pricing when it comes to some of these listings out there. And as far as just buyers, they have more opportunity when it comes to houses that are on there for like over 2 weeks. So you're looking at that 14-day plus. You can start to get a 10 to 15 price reduction, and then once you start going past that 10 to 15 days into 30 plus, that's when you can start to work at a little bit higher number reductions.
Yeah, so that you make up a great point. So, like a lot of the buyers that I'm working with, I'm telling them to look at homes that have been aged a little bit longer because you can usually negotiate something with that. And so I've been telling a lot of my buyers to try to negotiate closing costs, get the seller to help buy down the rate to make the rate a little bit more attractive. And we've been seeing, or at least I've been seeing lot more ability to negotiate. And that sounds like what you've been seeing. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot more wiggle room to negotiate when you're dealing with these sellers nowadays, just because they're used to houses being like if you're looking at the previous market with the pandemic, you're looking at houses that were going off within like 5 days to a week. And so right now you do have sellers, and we're warning the sellers about the market as well too, with the interest rates and the slowing down. However, it all depends on the motivation of the sellers as well too. So that is a big factor, because sometimes you may not have a motivated seller. At least they're not motivated to bring the price down to a certain point. So they may be very steadfast on their price. But overall, if you have a seller that I'll probably say average motivation, then if you're looking at 15, 30 days plus, even going further where you're looking at 60 days on the market, then you can find some reduction. You'll find some wiggle room.
Yeah. And how are you seeing the inventory right now for some of the buyers out there? It still seems to be a pretty tight market. Is that right?
Yes, I mean it's a little mixture, just because so kind of like we talked about, where a lot of those premium type of homes, like the turnkey type of homes, those houses, they don't sit on the market that long. However, when you're looking at houses that they may have, it's a possible roof, or possibly it doesn't have central air, or certain things that is probably missing, that the buyer knows that they're going to end up making an expense. Some of those houses, they sit down on the market, and those are the ones that you get a little bit more opportunity on.
Yeah. And let me ask you this: is there any difference? So you talked about turnkey house. Is there any difference between like a single family home and a condo, or are the markets very similar right now when it comes to both of them?
So the condos, they're going a little bit quicker, just because, so with the interest rates the way they are, you have a lot of buyers that at one point in time, with the interest rates when they were in the threes or even fours, they were able to own a single family. However, they went from being able to own like a mid-level, low-level single family, so now they're looking at their expenses like, we might as well own a townhome, or own a condo for the time being. Within the next 3 to 5 years, we could possibly sell it and then get it back into the single family, or even multi-families, depending on what their direction is. But condos right now are going pretty quick, because you have a lot of the first-time home buyers, which they'll lean back to that, as well as you have a lot of those buyers that are selling homes that that have been in their house for the 30 plus, 20 plus years, and they're looking to downsize, and they have a lot of equity on their house, and so they could pay for a condo all cash or even like 50% cash or even 80%, depending on what they want to do. Like they probably sold their home in Canton and they want to move to Rehoboth. You want to move to a condo or a townhome in Rehoboth. So you're looking at a house that's probably selling 800. They're probably buying a condo over there or a townhome that's probably 400 to 500, depending on what they want to do. Their expenses. Some may pay full cash. Some may pay 80% and then finance the other 20%. So you see a lot of the condos go fairly quickly right now. Single families do well. However, the single families, the ones that have a little bit more work, they sit on the market a little bit more, but also those are the ones with a little more opportunity. So if you're not a buyer that, if you don't mind getting your hands dirty to a certain extent, or if you don't mind, if it's a year or two, adding upgrades to the kitchen, heating system, roof, things of that nature, you don't mind doing those things down the line, then you have a lot of opportunity in getting some of those houses that may have certain things that need upgrading within the next 2, 3, 4 years. And that's sometimes what is causing them to be on the market going on plus 15 days, 30 plus days.
And so you and I done a lot in the greater Boston area. Are you seeing any difference in markets between towns, or is the market very similar in the Boston area of town to town? Can somebody expect things to be just a little bit easier to buy location? I'm not sure if the inventory situation shifts significantly in this area.
So it's a little bit tougher to buy. So the closer you get to Boston, the little bit tougher it is to buy. Not only what you're dealing with price, but you're also dealing with competition, just because very high populated area. So within that Boston area, I think one of the biggest reasons is you have a lot of people that still work in there. Although they've gone hybrid and there's some people that work at home permanently, there's still a good amount of people within that whole metro Boston area that are looking for homes, and it's still pretty competitive in Boston, and then as in those towns surrounding Boston. So I mainly deal with Boston and going into the South Shore. So if you're looking at towns like Canton, Rhode Island, I mean not Rhode Island, Canton, Randolph, Braintree, Quincy, Stoughton, Avon, some of those towns that are still close to Boston, where you have a lot of those buyers that are like, you know what, I still want to be close to Boston. I don't want to be that far. But at the same time, I don't want to pay those high prices. A lot of those towns, they've gone up since the pandemic, and they're still pretty up right now. Even though things have slowed down, the equity on those properties are still pretty high right now.
So if we had a new first time home buyer come to us, what towns would you tell them are probably a little bit easier to start their search in? If Boston, some of these surrounding towns are getting tougher, is there a town that you would?
Well, it depends on how attached they are to Boston. Like for instance, if it is somebody that works in Boston, let's say for instance a nurse, and they need to be either close to the commuter rail or they want to be within like 30 minutes, under 45 minutes getting into work, then you want to look at towns like Whitman, towns like Brockton, towns like Avon is still not bad. It's a smaller town. Only thing with Avon is low inventory inside that town. So pricing is not bad. However, just a very low amount of inventory inside a town like Avon. Let's see what other towns. If they don't mind going into the to the Bridgewaters, I think East Bridgewater may be a little far for certain people, but Bridgewater's not bad. West Bridgewater's not bad. And if you're probably going a little bit further east, I'd probably say Weymouth, Rockland. Those towns aren't too bad either.
Yeah, I remember I bought a place, what was it, 10 years ago? Oh, no, it was like 11 or 12 years ago. I was in Quincy at the time, and I ended up moving over to Weymouth. because Weymouth was cheaper and you got more house in Weymouth versus Quincy. But now Weymouth is like Quincy prices. It's crazy. So let me ask you this. We're only about 3 or 4 months away from the spring market. What do you think is going to happen this spring? Is it going to be, do you expect it to be a little bit tighter? Do you expect it to be easier? What is your expectation for this upcoming market?
So with the upcoming spring market, one thing we don't know is like where the interest rates are going to be at. So they've kind of been fluctuating up and down, up and down. So we can anticipate, if we anticipate them being higher than they are right now, most buyers, I think first time home buyers are still maybe a little bit affected by the interest rates. However, the spring in general brings a lot more competition. It may not be as much competition as the previous springs, as far as like via the previous springs, you could put a house on the market and that house may go within a week. And depending on the condition, let's say even if it's not in the best condition, sometimes you're looking at 2 weeks, no more than 30 days. Now going into the spring market, you'll see houses sitting on the market as long as they're sitting right now. However, those turnkey type of houses, they may not sit as long. And the houses that are right there on the edge of potential, you'll have those buyers that because it's more competition, you'll have more buyers out there, especially some of the savvy buyers that are looking at it, that are equipped for certain type of things within the house that will grab a house. Right now, not a lot of competition, so a lot more things are sitting on the market. But as the spring comes, it won't be as active as the previous spring, but at the same time, there will be a little bit more competition, even with interest rates possibly going into the sevens.
Yeah, so my expectation for rates, anyways, is, I look at the inflation numbers, and my expectation is that through the first quarter of next year, we're going to see interest rates. We're going to see inflation come down, which I expect will put downward pressure on rates. And so my expectation is we're probably going to be looking at rates somewhere between 5.5 and 6, maybe 5.5 and 6.5, by probably.
Well,
by the end of
if rates are right around like the 5 and 6, if they kind of hover around there, if they hover right around a constant level, like what we're saying is probably like a 5.5 to 6, you'll have a lot more buyers that, I mean, unfortunately for buyers, it'll bring a little bit more competition. Same thing, like I said, not as much as the previous years, but at the same time, it'll still bring a level of competition because in the beginning of the spring, let's say it's 5, and they probably try to slow things down, bring it up to like 5, 7, or 6, whatever the case is, just to slow things down. You'll still have enough buyers that are out there that are like, you know what, I still could do 6.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of buyers out there that are still pretty comfortable with doing 6, and because they've gotten used to 6 started right around, believe the 6s started right around like last June, if I'm correct, is when we started getting 6. So you'd have buyers that have gotten used to, even budgeting for 6%, and they're like, you know what, if it's still around 6 in March or still around 6 in April, then I'll try to grab a house at this price, or I'll grab a house with this type of mortgage rate, whatever the case is.
So I've been telling people, I'm like, listen, if you buy now where rates are, if rates go up, you're happy because you have a lower rate than where rates go. And if you buy now and rates go down, then we just refinance you. And I really think that, like, if rates go down, and because we still have a pretty low inventory market, at least from what I understand.
Yeah.
And if rates decrease a little bit and there's more competition, it could actually make the market tough. So I'm telling a lot of my buyers, I'm like, if you can do it now, do it now. We obviously can't predict the future, but we can anticipate it. And, if my anticipation is correct, buying now is probably a good option. And the question just comes down to, there's a real inventory issue right now. And you're seeing that as well. Is that correct? There's still a significant inventory issue, right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. If you're able to buy within the spring, and the tricky thing too is, like, I mean, within the winter, sorry about that. If you're able to buy within sometime around this winter, you could definitely get a pretty decent deal. The only tricky thing is it all depends on the selection of houses that you're looking for. So with the level of inventory, sometimes buyers are looking at it. Well, I don't have the house that I'm looking for that's out there right now. Well, just like we're saying right now, and I'm dealing with it with like one of my buyers as well too, where they're also in a situation where they don't want to be in that house for that long. They're probably only doing it for 3 to 5 years. If you're in a 3 to 5 year house or 3 to 5 year plan where you're not necessarily, it's not going to be your dream home, but it's going to be a home that you just want it to be comfortable, convenient for work as well as family, things of that nature, then you probably want to look at a house that's somewhat within your budget, even under your budget, something that you could probably add value to within the next 3 to 5 years. And within that 3 to 5 years, when it comes up, depending on where the market's at, you try to go ahead and sell the one that you have and try to go after that dream home. So sometimes it's not necessarily the house isn't there for you right now. Maybe it's something you probably strategize and get something that's decent or something that's reliable right now, and then down the line, 3 to 5 years, whatever your plan is, get that dream home that you really want at a better rate, and even sometimes depending on the equity that's you've earned on the property you have right now, you probably can get the home that you really wanted at a much lower rate than you probably could have got it right that this year.
Absolutely. So are you seeing people buy houses that need a little bit more TLC right now? So, something that they can work and put value into? What kind of buying patterns are you seeing people when it comes to these houses?
So it really depends on the buyers as well too. So if you're dealing with buyers that they don't want to put a lot of the work in, for the most part, like as far as like some of that sweat equity, then for the most part, they want to lean towards a house that's more turnkey. So even if it's not 100% turnkey, they want it to be a house that they could live in for the next 2, 3 years, and then they could start adding some value to it, doing some of their own changes. However, some of the buyers that I have dealt with that they don't necessarily mind putting the sweat equity. They don't mind. They want a house with good potential, especially when they're looking at the way the market is. They don't necessarily want to buy at the top end. They'd rather buy at the low end, buy a house that they could put a little sweat equity in, whether if it's finishing the basement, upgrading the bathrooms and kitchen, or even do a redo on the floorings, or even exterior work like um, siding and roofing. Certain buyers that don't mind doing that, they those are the ones that can get a little bit more discount on the properties. Granted, you're going to be putting some sweat equity over the next couple of years, but if you don't mind a kitchen that's 30 years old, if you don't mind a roof that's 20, 25 years old, is going to need to be replaced within the next 5 years. If you don't mind certain things of that nature, then you have some room to negotiate, and you could possibly get a pretty decent deal within this winter.
So have you had anybody ask about renovation loans like a 203K or a home style?
I had asked somebody about those loans, and I think we've talked about these loans before. The tricky thing with them is it kind of changes their buying or what they're able to buy. So I know we've talked about before where somebody with an FHA loan could possibly get, let's say, for instance, 400,000, a $400,000 loan, but a 203K loan could possibly come in at 250, and the buying power or the loan that they're giving you to buy the house with could be anywhere between I don't know, anywhere between 50 to 100,000 depending on the loan itself. So I think that changes things for certain people. It's one of those loans that's real good, but it also depends on how much they're getting approved for and what they're actually trying to go after.
Yeah. So the interest rate on the renovation loans tend to be a little bit higher than your typical loan. So it can affect like the affordability or the maximum purchase price. One of the things that I like about it, or at least with the 203K loan, is it gives you a 10% flexibility on the appraisal value. So like let's say you buy a house for 300,000 and you're putting $100,000 into it. If the property came in a little less than then your acquisition cost, which would be the purchase price and the renovation cost, you're actually in an okay situation. So like in that example, if you bought a house for 300 and 100, if the property came in at like 380, because you have that 10% wiggle room, you could still close on that house. Whereas if you buy a house for 400 and the appraisal comes in under, then that lower appraisal value can actually have an issue. So that's one of the great things, especially in this shifting market, where where values, it might be harder to get an appraisal depending on where the values go and everything like that.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this: do you have any tips for sellers and buyers as we head into the rest of this winter and spring? What are your tips for everybody?
So as far as sellers, one thing I'll probably give sellers a tip on would just be pricing. One of the biggest things right now going into this market is just making sure that you're listening to your realtor and trying to price your property the right way. So I think right now you have some sellers that, especially some of the houses that are sitting on the market like 30, 60 plus days, and sometimes you're looking at it and it's in really good condition, but it's priced 100,000, 50,000 above market. So what happens is if you're a seller and you're still looking at what was going on with throughout the pandemic, the 2020 and the 2021, and you're trying to price at the top end of the market, sometimes that could push a lot of buyers away. And you could see your property sitting on the market for longer than you want to, or you could probably see yourself putting more price reductions on your property than you want to. So biggest things I would tell them is price your property the right way. Make sure you listen to your realtor, listen to all the comps and read all the comps that they're giving you, and try to price your property as correctly as possible. And another reason for that too is just like Eric had talked about when it comes to appraisals. If, for instance, you want to price your property at the top end, let's say, for instance, 600, but the bank or the lender, they come in with their appraisal and it comes in at 550, and there was no language within the contract or within the offer that's saying that they're going to cover that appraisal gap, then you're either in a situation where you got to back out of the deal, or you're going to just take $50,000 less. So it's very important for both reasons, whether if you're going over asking or if you're going under, somebody's coming under asking. If you have to be in a situation where you go under asking, that you price your property the right way. So as far as buyers though, one thing I would tell buyers is, one, when you get your pre-approval, make sure that you kind of go through everything as far as what your finances are going to be. So I think sometimes when buyers get their pre-approval, sometimes they can get in a situation where they can get very excited in some situations. Like, let's say, for instance, they were expected to get approved for 600,000, but you end up approving them for 800, 900,000. So they're over the moon. They're looking at houses that are 800, 900,000 up until you tell them that their payments are going to be an extra 3,000 more than what they were anticipated paying. So it's very important that you look at all the numbers. Sit down with your lender, sit down with your real estate agent, look at all the numbers, research the properties, take a look at the properties. Definitely don't be an online buyer. So make sure you walk the properties, take a look at the properties, because photographs nowadays are very good. Nowadays, you can look at a house that's 1,800 square foot, fully renovated, and by the time you go inside there, it looks like you're living in a tin can, and the renovations aren't as nice as they look. So do your research on the numbers when you get your pre-approval. Make sure you're comfortable with all the numbers. Make sure you know what price you want to come in at. Research the properties with your lender as well as with your realtor. Make sure you guys are comfortable, because different towns can fluctuate, just like as far as taxes and things of that nature. So research as much as you possibly can, see the property, and once you get out there and start making offers, don't be afraid to make offers. You're gonna hear no's, and that's all right. No's is perfectly fine. You won't hear on what's called. You won't hear an offer. You won't hear a no on an offer that you don't place. So if you don't put an offer, you won't hear an answer on anything. Even if it's like 5 no's, once you get that yes, it's going to be the perfect yes. So go out there, put offers. Don't be afraid to put offers. Don't be afraid to hear no's, and put it at the price that you're comfortable at too. Don't be. You don't have to be in a situation where you're going well above your budget just to try to get your house. Go at a price that you're comfortable in. Make sure that you're comfortable with your finances, because at the end of the day, you have to be comfortable with your payments. You don't want to be in a situation where you're in over your head, and next thing you know, although don't get it wrong, we'd love to be in a situation where you're selling where we'll help you sell a house again, but at the same time, we don't want to be in a situation. You personally as a buyer don't want to be in a situation where you're selling your house when you don't have to, from a financial reason, because you probably planned wrong, just because it was a house that you loved and you overpaid for it. So make sure that you're comfortable with all terms. Numbers, you're comfortable with the house, you're comfortable with even repairs that you want to do with it, and put that offer in.
Absolutely. You made a good point about photos. I've been in a few houses after looking at the photos, and I thought they had filters on like you see in social media nowadays. I'm like, it looks like a completely different house when you show up. It's crazy. And you made another good point, being comfortable with your payment. I often tell people there's sometimes a difference between what I can qualify you for and what you're comfortable with. And so I try to always have that conversation and ask somebody what kind of payment they're comfortable with. So great points on that one. So you and I have obviously worked on a few deals together, and that's why I wanted to have you on. If somebody has questions about buying in the greater Boston area, tell them how to get in touch with you so that they can ask the questions that they need.
Okay, so best way to get in contact with me would be cell phone number. So my cell phone number is 774-257-3938. You can either email me as well, and my email is rockysellsne, so ROCKYSELLSNE @gmail.com. I'll answer text messages, phone calls, emails at any point in time. So feel free to call me anytime.
Perfect. Well, hey, thank you, Gaetan, for coming on today. And thank you for everybody watching our podcast today, Own Your Future. If you could please like, share, and do all the other social media stuff so that some other people can see this podcast, we would appreciate it. This is Own Your Future with Eric Clay, and we'll see you next time.